Listen, I'll tell you something. The hardest shoes to be standing in is my shoes. I can use 100% of my brain, and the whole world can only use between 7 and 15%. You don't know how difficult it is for me. You just think about you and being judgmental and competitive and think, oh, he's an idiot, he's a liar, because you're an idiot yourself and a liar, right? And you don't understand that at all. You got to be in my shoes to master your own mind and use 100% of your brain and all your natural process with natural selection. Mental telepathy, ESP, promote you in telekinesis, levitation, spoon bending, clock winding, folding space and time with deja vu, where you can predict the future and prevent what's going to happen. And this is solid evidence that I can predict the future and prevent what's going to happen. It's on 7 peer reports by the biggest think tank in the world on the Mastermind Report. I can do things no one else can. And on DNA studies done, I've got the most divine power to command nature in my biological system with my own DNA, with genetic memory and a genetic process. So I have more faith in my own biological genes in my DNA than anyone else does, with natural selection and natural order in life, because I know what I'm doing. And when people don't know what they're doing, they don't know. And that's all there is to it. They don't know. When I came to Denmark, I was unlawfully deported, and I came here 8 years ago. And I thought Denmark was the happiest country in the world. That's the way it was, advertised worldwide, to be the best country in the world, the happiest country in the world. And when I got here, I got a shock of my life. As I came here, I was being rejected like you wouldn't believe, and they wouldn't give me any money. I was left in the streets. And I had to commit a crime because I had no family, no loved ones, no friends, no money, no nothing. They rejected me and said I was an alien. My passport was invalid and I was a liar. They supplied the passport. I was born in Denmark in 1960 and I was deported from Australia unlawfully, but they claim I was Australian on a bodgy passport and wouldn't pay me. I got so shit scared without family or anyone to help me. I was staying, right, in a, a crisis centre. Now, the people there kept me there for 4 days extra, knowing there was something wrong. A lady from the head of the system went to a meeting. She told me in that meeting, 2 very official people walked in and said, keep him on the ground. Do not help him in any way, shape, or form. We don't want to talk about him. We want him to stay on the ground. She came back and told me this. She said she had never seen 2 people walk in a meeting like this before. And they knew exactly what we were talking about, you. And they ordered them to shut their mouth and mind their own business and make sure they keep him on the ground. When I got that message from this lady who was working for the job centre system, Boas, mate, I shit myself. You could not imagine coming from Australia, no family, no loved ones, no friends, no one to help you. And the system does this to you and you get told this. Can you even begin to imagine what it feels like? You should try and imagine what that feels like when you're deported from Australia to Denmark and you got no one there. And this is what they do to you. I shit myself, right? So I took out a credit card fraud for 10,000 kronas, which is about $2,000. And I went to phone shops, 3 different phone shops, and bought brand new iPhones and iPads and sold them on contracts. And then I ran to LA in fear, in pure fear. Like, you have no idea. But a mate of mine in LA said, come down here, Kim. You can stay with me, right? And you can work with me with cars, right? You got a place to stay and a feed. And it's the only option I had outside of Australia. I didn't know anyone outside Australia, really. And when he said, come there, I went there. I took this opportunity, took this money, got on the plane and got the fuck out of here. Why wouldn't I? I went back in Australia and got deported back to Denmark again. And I landed on the 27th of April 2017 in Denmark. When I came back to Denmark, they had me under Interpol and I was lost. So I had an interview with them and I told them straight. I said, what do you expect me to do? Of course I'd fucking run. I had nowhere to go, man. And what you put me through? What do you expect? So they put me on money straight away in that moment, right? Didn't fuck me around at all. I stayed in home shelters with about 70 people, watching people going for a revolving door. I didn't know anybody in Denmark, but I had a bad cough and a bad cold. I went to the doctors a few times, okay? And, you got to really listen to this very carefully, right? Mainstream media in Denmark right now, they say that elderly are a burden to society. They pumped up the pension twice since I've been here, and they get young all the time, and more mental suicides, more DD addictions, and taking more drugs than ever. And hospitals are going through the roof also with nurses. Listen to me carefully, right? I watched this on TV the last 8 years, 3 or 4 times, escalating non-stop. 2 years ago, on mainstream media all over Denmark, 3 different retirement homes for elderly. They weren't getting fed at all, and they weren't getting their ass wiped in homes for the elderly, not looked after. A lady named Lulu, born in Africa, married a Danish person and is a Danish citizen. She's been a nurse in Denmark for 20 years. She's African born and been a nurse in Denmark for 20 years. She was African born. And I found that people born around Africa, a lot of outlanders, other people, there's a lot more normal people. Danish people are so inverted into themselves. Very, 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 very sensitive and highly emotional. You can't have an intellectual conversation, right? They always tell me my morals are too high. I got high morals. There's no such thing using that kind of grammar. Morals are standard. And if you've got low morals, you don't tell someone they've got high morals because they got low morals. So they use that kind of language, inverted into themselves, as if you've got high morals when they in fact have low morals. Their system constantly demands that you respect them, but they lie to you all the time and set you up, okay? And they're delusional. 3 people in the job centre, right, want me to go to psychiatrist because I went to psychiatrist. I first went to psychiatrist because we found the cure of the human condition in Australia, and I set the standards for my DNA study. I'm the most powerful primordial being in the world that cures the human condition that's going to save humanity. Now, that's stress, fear, and anxiety, mental disorders, and defects, and all these sort of things, right, that everyone dies prematurely from, the human conditioning. So I don't suffer the human condition, I cure it. So I went to see a psychiatrist knowingly that the World Transformation Movement from Australia was going to push and command this push with 16,000 top scholars in the world through the whole goddamn system, especially in Europe, living in denial. Total species in denial, the most. Anti-clockwise, in their own body and their own DNA, with the most mental disorder defects going through the roof and the most denial. So they don't look after their elderly at all, right? And they're shit scared of going to homes. And when you see mainstream media, they don't get their ass wiped or fed. And then you sit down with Lulu, and Lulu tells you, Kim, I've been doing this for 20 years, and I can tell you, this is an absolute forbidden subject. But when I go to work at night time in all the hospitals and the care homes, when I tend to people in emergency buttons, they tell me to stop doing it because I put them on show and make them look bad. I put them on show and make them look bad, so they demand that I stop serving them on emergency buttons when they need me. And I've been dealing this from hospital to hospital through Denmark and seeing in all Danish people in the hospitals and in the homes with the elderly. As she said, I knew shit was going to hit the fan sooner or later. And it's been on TV several times now in the last couple of years. But look at this. And that was the first time Lulu in 5 years actually came out and told me the truth. She was afraid of talking about it. When I first came here and had a bad flu, right, I got sent to a hospital, right, with a blood test, right, for ammonia, right, for ammonia or a bad flu, right, but it's for ammonia. I went for a blood test and a test at the hospital. Came back to the doctors. When I went back to the doctors, also had scans done of my back operation. I was supposed to have a back operation. I went to this doctor and she told me, everything's fine. Everything's fine. And I thought, that's really odd, because I had a really bad cold for a long time, a really bad cough with phlegm. And, you know, I thought it was very odd. And then my back report was at most advanced, and she said it was fine. And I thought, that's really strange. No more than 2 months later, I was admitted in the same hospital. They came and saw me in that hospital, and when I was admitted, I collapsed with ammonia, okay, lung infection. My reading was 5 times higher than it should have been, because I had it for more than 18 months. The doctor came up and said, why did you not go to the doctors about this at an earlier date? Its reading is that high. I said, I came here 2 months ago for the test. He said, what, here? I said, here. So he goes down to look at the reports in the same hospital, and he gets a blood test, and he comes back up and he says, oi, someone put the wrong tick in the box, right, for the wrong blood test. They didn't test you for infection, you know, for emphysema, and they took the wrong blood test. But not only did the doctor make a mistake, but the person that took the blood also never looked twice, because the top of the form said, this is for, right, for the infection, for emphysema, for ammonia. And it was the wrong box ticked. But the lady performed the blood and read the blood. They also went by the tick in the box and not what it said on the top of the form, which is astonishing, because that's what it says in the email, that I'm there to be tested for ammonia, lung infection. But the actual paperwork had the wrong tick. And I find that so astonishing that the doctor comes running up to me and says, they made the mistake. The doctor was responsible for me losing 30% of my lungs. I go to another homestead, okay, another home shelter. Over there, I get a letter from the hospital asking me, where was I? Where was I? I was recommended to go and see the hospital about my back for a back operation, but she told me it was okay. So she lied twice. Delusional, completely delusional. I went to see a psychiatrist and told the psychiatrist, you know, they can only do the human conditioning and research across the whole nation, and going to get everyone to see a psychiatrist. You know that because you work as a psychiatrist, and I know you know. He said, yes, I do. I said, well, I'm Kim Christensen, born in Australia, that found the cure human condition DNA studies done with Jeremy Gibbs and the top bowlers in the whole world who wrote the book Freedom, the Cure Human Condition That's Going to Save Humanity, which is what this is all about, and you know that. He said, yes, I do. I said, can you put that down in the documents so that you can put a web in, a phone in, because I know they're going to subject everybody, right, to mental health research with a psychiatrist. But they're going to do it without reason up here, because they think I'm reverse psychology like the cops and do whatever they want. And Job Centre, the young girls, sent me to see a psychiatrist because I didn't have a copy of the report when I went to see a psychiatrist. I said, it's none of your fucking business. I went to see a psychiatrist. It's got nothing to do with you. Oh, but we have to have a report? What for? Well, we just want to know what's going on. None of your business. You didn't send me for that report. She sent me for another visit to see a psychiatrist without telling me. So I questioned why she was doing that, and this was the excuse, that she didn't have a report the first time I went. I said, it had nothing to do with you. You didn't send me. So what do you send me a second time for without telling me or even discussing the subject with me? Because you ordered that I go to see a psychiatrist by booking me in and not even talking to me with any respect and with any moral value. So you demand to go to see a psychiatrist on what grounds? That you're delusional. Because you're delusional. Because you think you have the authority to be a cop and a Peter Good and tell me what I have to do, because you come to your own conclusion with reasoning with a voice mind that tells you to do that. And that's delusional, right? To think you have the authority. That happened to me 3 times with 3 people in the job centre, and I got one of them sacked. They demand and respect them and set me up to see a psychiatrist and lied to me then demand or respect them when they lie to me and set me up to see a psychiatrist without talking to me and without me giving them consent in any way, shape or form or any discussion. Then they demand I respect them. And I said to them, listen, I come here and use my manners and I'm always kind and show up for every appointment and never once have I let you down. I'm not like you lot. I've always showed up at my appointments. I've never treated you like rubbish. I've always treated with kindness and manners. But if you want respect from me, that's the quantum mechanic of a relationship. Loyalty, honor, respect, moments, inspiration, going. The quantum mechanics with codependent relationship. You earn respect from someone over a period of time. You don't demand it. And every Danish person and people on social media platform demands respect and don't earn it. Without kindness, right? And without any manners. Now, I'm on drugs for having a bad problem in my back and I go have an operation. I was on Tramadol, 100 milligram maximum, 50 or 100, and I didn't take it for a couple of months and stop it all the time. But I had a permanent prescription. I stopped taking Tramadol, okay, for about 5 months. Then I went down to the doctor and said, I need another prescription with just 50 milligram, one a day, right? And I'm already prescribed for them, right, by the back surgeons, right, doing an operation from the head specialist. The doctor refused to give it to me and says, no, can't have it. I said, why not? I don't take it very much. Not like the people here write opiates out by the truckloads do, because they're selling on the streets everywhere. And everyone's loaded with opiates everywhere where Australia's banning it. And you're giving out away like lollies, and then you want to stop me having Tramadol. That's nowhere near the side effects because I refuse to take opiates. And I told you that. I refuse to take opiates, but they offer opiates. And they always do. And I refuse it. And that's reverse engineering because in Australia, they stop opiates and they do it with Tramadol, right? That is a less side effect and less dangerous. In Denmark, they do the opposite, right? Lyrica was a nerve tablet in Australia and they used it for psychedelic effects up here and mental disorders and anxiety. And not one doctor knew that Lyrica was used for a nerve tablet because of my spinal cord that was being pinched with a bone until they did the operation and released it. And I haven't been using either drug ever since, but I was using it for my pinched nerve in my back that they operated, okay, and that got fixed in 2019. The doctors refused to give me this, and every time I asked for Lyrica, they said, oh, you got mental disorders and anxiety. No, I said, I don't. It's my spinal cord, right, that's pinched. They looked at me like I was stupid. Every doctor I've been to, 7 doctors, thinks it's for nerves, and I said, take a look at the fucking computer. What it's developed for. Pregabalin is actually designed for nerve pain. And so they looked it up and it's designed for nerve pain. So they misused that drug all over Denmark and the doctors don't even know what it's for. When you learn that doctors don't even know what it's for and they don't even know what they're doing, even with Tramadol and opiates, I put a doctor in the spot and I said, listen, I'm going down to see a lawyer for malpractice because you're trying to give me a drug that's more dangerous, opiates, and you won't give me Tramadol. So he flips the computer and shows me a memo from the government asking them to give their people opiates and not Tramadol because it's cheaper. Really? It causes 17 times worse adverse effects in hospitals. And that's why everybody in Denmark's on opiates. And that's why the elders take more drugs than ever and can't cope. And children don't look after them neither. And especially when they go into homes, they don't even get their ass wiped and fed. Complaints all over Denmark. That's how Danish people really genuinely are. Now, right, their hospitals are going through the roof with nurses, right, and doctors because they suffer more mental disorders and more defects than ever in history. And the elderly are a burden in society. You know why? I'll tell you why. The same idiots that won't look after their parents. The average person on mainstream media throws out 160 kilos of clothes per person per year. That's how mentally insane these people in Denmark are. They buy 7 times more internet stuff with packaging and fast foods with cakes and cupcakes and crap like that from fast food shops than anybody else in the world does. They can't cook their own meals and they can't look after themselves in real life. They have the worst mental disorder and defects in the whole world, right, going through the fucking roof. Every Danish person I've met here is on drugs and lie about it at the same time. You know, mainstream media says it's only 10% of the cause, right, that's controlled by stress. What a load of bullshit. The same statistics shows that 27 people smoke weed because they can't cope, and amphetamine, right, and opiates are going through the fucking roof with cocaine, right? So much you got no fucking idea, and they all lie about it. They'll take more happy pills than ever in history, right? And we go into the sales of these things, and you look at the hospitals, and you look at the peer reports, and take a look at every single hospital and every home, you can see how they really are, right? They're disgusting animals. Don't look after their parents, self-centered creatures, consume too much, couldn't give a fuck about anything, and live in a massive global delusional state. And job centre, you have 5 times more people working behind the counter than in Australia. And they have security guards everywhere and only 2 or 3 people at the front because they're scared, nervous, right? You talk to anyone with paramedics in the hospitals, you can't say fucking shit because they're nervous and they act like cops and call the security guards in a heartbeat. You go to all the shopping centres here like Foodtex, there's security guards everywhere because they're nervous. And then call the cops and they think they're cops everywhere because they're spineless, nervous cowards living in a massive global delusional state. And they love the governments and they love the system and they have no idea what they're doing. We're parasites in a massive global delusional state. And they lie, demand you respect them, and cannot function in real life. Every person I've met in Denmark takes mental disorder tablets, and most of them got ADHD, and they act like really nice people, really friendly in a delusional state. And when you get behind closed doors, it comes out, man. Right? They come out of the skeleton, right? And they're full of stress, fear, and anxiety, and so sentimental, emotional, you can't have an intelligent conversation with them. They don't know what love is, man. They have no real, genuine relationships because they just live in coffee shops, cake shops, artificial towns. They live on screens all day, and they live on screens more than anything. And in the streets, they don't even look at each other. They don't even smile at each other, man. I'm telling you, you've never seen nothing like it. People do not smile at you in the streets. They just look at you, and you can read what's on their mind, and they're just judgmental and competitive, right? And barely never smile. Can't function, don't wave. You try to talk to them, you got to be careful what you're saying. You got to walk on soft shells because, mate, they can't have an intelligent conversation, right? And if you try to bite back at them with their behaviour and their judgmental and competitive behaviour, you realise they're control freaks. Absolutely control freaks. Controlled by the bush mind and sensitive and highly emotional and quick to push a button anywhere because they're shit scared. They're fucking terrified. And the elderly here are terrified of going to homes. And why wouldn't they be when you see on mainstream media their youth's gone up on drug pandemics and suicide rates going through the roof, over 38% in their children in 12 months. And when their children's going up in suicide rates and drug pandemics all over the streets and 38% in 12 months, and you see what's happening in the homes where they don't feed the elderly and don't wipe them down. Imagine what the average 30 and 40-year-olds like in Denmark. Because you're starting to see that with the most powerful statistics, right? Right, in what? In home shelters. And home shelters is like a revolving door here. And there's so many home shelters because nobody takes anyone home. No family, lovers and friends, right? And those revolving doors and these home shelters are unbelievable compared to Australia. And when you see so many people going through these home shelters everywhere, and how many people go through hospitals like this, and how they accelerate with more nurses, and now they need to hire nurses from Philippines and Thailand because they can't even function and keep up anymore. And they can't wipe down the elderly who are terrified of going to homes when they see news like this. And then the governments say on mainstream media, the elderly are the biggest burden on society. The government says the elderly is a burden on society. You can see why they are the way they are with a government like this that puts up their pension when they're getting younger and suffering more and more every day, and their kids don't care. They're in and out of homes. They can't even get a place to stay themselves. And the elderly goes through these homes like you wouldn't believe. that are not even in their homes. Elderly, 60, 70 years old, go through these home shelters everywhere, and not one of the kids will take care of them. And some of them work, are normal people, like Lilu. She was a nurse, Lilu, right? I met people in their 60s and 70s that were still working, but nobody would ever visit them, and nobody ever cared. And they were not even in a home. Families, right, when they go in homes, barely never see them, right? And they're terrified in Denmark. So many elders, and when you talk to them, you find out the true statistics and realise what your government's really like. When they try to put in the worst drugs in the world and live in brain lock denial, but they provoke the human conditioning, right? With stress and anxiety. They push every button with authority and controlling behaviour, living in a massive global delusional state, sensitive, not emotional, lie all the time, and an absolute control freak. And you can see that in job centres. They take control themselves. And you know what? They think they can treat you like they're a cop. They think they're special in Denmark. And that's why outlanders in Denmark cannot handle Danish people, because they treat them like fucking shit. I'm from Australia. I'm Danish. They come and talk to me. I watch how they make mates with everybody else, and then behind their back, they stab the fuck out of them. They're that two-faced. When they talk to me alone, they backstab everybody else they possibly can. That's not Danish. And I turn on them because I feel like they do. No differently. Because I know they are the most inverted, reverse psychology human beings in the world, and they have no aura at all, anti-clockwise in their body cells, and corruption, corrosion during the daytime. And I'm clockwise. My aura is 100 times more powerful with DNA studies done, and DNA doesn't lie. And I can feel how negative these people are, trapped in mentality, in a personality, and there's absolutely no biofields in 27 fields. They don't have mental telepathy, ESP, remote viewing, telekinesis, levitation, spinning, clock winding, folding space and time with deja vu to predict the future of event what's going to happen. They can't use any natural process, and they suffer mental disorders and defects going through the roof on grammar and reverse psychology, trapped inside their skull, inside their personality, and there's nothing spiritual about these people, and there's no loving, compassionate creatures here with real loyalty, honor, respect, moral, inspiration, government, because they've got no codependent power, no intuitive EMP pulse with codependent feelings and codependent relationships. And that's a fact. They just conquer, debate, and divide with self-centered egotism. Nervous, spineless cows can't hold an intellectual conversation, okay? And all they are is control freaks and demand respect and couldn't care less. They got no genuine feelings. They got no loyalty, honor, respect, moral inspiration, or encouragement at all. They live in a massive global delusional state. And you have to come from Australia, where you have your aura clockwise, to use 100% of your brain to come to the Nordic to realise how fucked up, right, mentality really is in Denmark and the whole Nordic, and how negative they are, and they're not human, man. Right? That's why they're called post-humans, are speech in denial. And when I went to LA for 4 months, it was the same thing. That's why they have the worst mental disorders and defects, right, in America and in the Nordic. And believe me, you have to use 100% of your brain and master your mind from the outside in and control your business from the outside to know these things, because you have a God-given gift, right, to command nature. Divine power to command nature, do everything Christ can and more. And there's only a handful of us left in the world that can use that natural process in the most powerful confirmation on earth. And when you come to the Nordic, in the Western civilization and into America, they're the most inverted into themselves, trapped inside their mentality, right, with amnesia in a reincarnated trap and oblivious to it. They can only use up to 15% of their brain. They can't use their natural process with the natural selection. They don't even have faith in their own biological genes, but it's in their DNA with genetic memory and genetic process. And they've got amnesia. They can only use 15% of their brain at the most. They can only use 5% of their biofields, right? They've got 5 senses and 27 senses to think outside the mind, right? With dimensional thinking, remote viewing, mental telepathy, ESP, telekinesis, levitation, spoon bending, clock winding, folding space and time with deja vu, predict the future, prevent what's going to happen, to think clockwise, to prevent the future and prevent what's going to happen, with remote viewing and deja vu. And they do not know what they do when they're trapped in their mind and so limited without these tools. They can only think mentally and psychologically, and they cannot think instinctively. As I said in the Matrix documentary in 1999 and declared a species in 2003, there are artificial human beings in post-human states worldwide. They can't think straight, and they think they know better than what we do, but they have mental disorders and 600 to 6,000 defective genes in every Westerner, and they lost their magnetic pulse, and Fabio is collapsing. That's their immune system. Their body cells go corruption during the daytime and can only appear in the nighttime, right? Their mental disorder and defects are going through the roof and escalating with the placebo effect anti-clockwise in the aura. DNA is a book of life, and they're not living it. I am. And you have to be me to know this. These people throw away 160 kilos of clothes per person per year and go through internet buying and delusional parasitosis in ways you do not understand. And you can see it in the whole system here on mainstream media, right? They don't take care of each other. They have no idea what love is and the quantum mechanic of a relationship because they don't have it. Its unit of codependent power, EMP pulse, is gone into a six-matrix extinction, being stripped in the sixth sense for the sixth time. And this is where the biggest adverse effect is. Denmark, Norway, Sweden, and America. The worst mental disorders, point defects, and the most species in denial.